The evening was calm, the kind of tranquility that precedes a storm, as I sat down to watch the latest video from Mr. Beast. Known for his grandiose challenges and generosity, his content was always a source of excitement. But this video, titled The Ultimate Survival Challenge Win and Discover the Unknown, had a different, more ominous tone. The video opened with Mr. Beast standing in a dense, fog-laden forest. His usual bright, energetic demeanor was overshadowed by a sense of foreboding. He spoke about a survival challenge unlike any he had done before, set in a forest shrouded in myths and dark legends. The prize, he claimed, would change the winner's life in unimaginable ways. As he walked through the forest, detailing the rules, the camera occasionally caught unsettling movements in the mist, shapes that seemed too deliberate to be mere tricks of light. Mr. Beast's voice wavered slightly as he explained that participants would be dropped randomly into the forest with minimal supplies and had to find their way to a specific location within 48 hours. There was something deeply unsettling about the forest itself. The trees seemed unnaturally twisted, and the mist appeared to move with a life of its own. The usual cuts and edits of his videos were absent, replaced by long, unbroken shots that heightened the sense of unease. In certain moments, it almost seemed like Mr. Beast was signaling for help subtly, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. The creepiest part came when he paused mid-sentence, looking off into the forest as if he heard something unsettling. The microphone picked up a faint, unidentifiable whisper before he quickly resumed talking, brushing it off as the wind. The video ended abruptly with a call to action for viewers to apply for the challenge. Despite the fear it instilled in me, my curiosity was piqued. Driven by a mixture of excitement and an inexplicable sense of dread, I found myself filling out the application form, a decision that would plunge me into a nightmare far beyond the realm of any usual Mr. Beast challenge. The night after watching the video, I experienced restless sleep, plagued by dreams of wandering in a dense, whispering forest. Shadows twisted around the trees, and indistinct voices called out from the mist. Each time I awoke, it felt as if the remnants of the forest's eerie atmosphere lingered in my room, a feeling that something unseen was watching me from the shadows. The sense of foreboding from Mr. Beast's video stayed with me until the day I received the confirmation email. I was selected for the challenge. A mix of fear and exhilaration coursed through me as I prepared for the journey. Little did I know, I was stepping into a nightmare that would blur the lines between reality and terror. Arriving at the designated meeting point, the forest was more intimidating than any camera could capture. Its trees stood like twisted sentinels, shrouded in a mist that seemed to swallow light. Mr. Beast was there to greet us, but up close, he seemed different, his usual vibrant energy replaced by a tense, almost fearful demeanor. As the challenge commenced, we were blindfolded and taken to our starting locations deep within the forest. When the blindfold was removed, I found myself alone in an environment that felt alive with a malevolent presence. The air was thick with a chilling dampness, and the silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional distant rustle or thud that seemed too deliberate to be natural. As I navigated the forest, the sense of being watched was inescapable. The trees appeared to shift subtly, their gnarled branches clawing at the mist. I heard whispers then, faint and indecipherable, that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the forest. These were not the whispers of the wind, they carried a sinister intention, as if the forest itself was communicating. When night fell, the forest transformed. The mist grew denser, and the darkness seemed to move, hiding shapes that watched and followed. The whispers grew louder, now joined by distant, unsettling screams and the sounds of something large moving through the underbrush. I felt a deep, primal fear, the realization that I was not at the top of the food chain here. The most terrifying moment came when I saw a figure in the distance. Thinking it was another participant, I called out, but the figure vanished into the mist with unnatural speed. As I continued, I stumbled upon remnants of old campsites, torn and scattered, as if left by previous challengers who had met grim fates. Sleep was impossible. Every rustle of leaves or snap of a branch sent adrenaline coursing through me. The forest felt alive, hostile, and predatory. It was as if the challenge was not just about survival against the elements, but against the forest itself, which seemed to harbor a dark, ancient intelligence. That night, under the oppressive canopy of the haunted forest, I realized the challenge was far more horrific than anything I had imagined. It was not just a game for views or entertainment, it was a struggle against an unseen, malevolent force that lurked in the shadows of the trees, watching, waiting. The second day dawned with no relief from the oppressive dread that had settled over the forest. The sun struggled to penetrate the thick canopy, casting eerie shadows that played tricks on my mind. The whispering seemed to be everywhere now, a constant, sinister murmur that followed my every step. As I trekked through the dense undergrowth, the forest's malevolence became more tangible. The trees themselves seemed to contort and creak in unnatural ways, as if communicating in a language of fear. The whispers turned into voices, now calling my name, laced with a menacing intent. I couldn't tell if they were a product of my frayed nerves or something more supernatural. In my path, I found disturbing signs that I wasn't alone. Footprints appeared and disappeared mysteriously, leading to nowhere. Scraps of clothing hung from branches, and once, chillingly, I found a camcorder left by a previous participant. The footage was jumpy and filled with static, but it showed the participant being pursued by something unseen, their screams cutting abruptly as the camera fell to the ground. The most horrifying revelation came when I reached a clearing. In the center stood Mr. Beast, or rather, what resembled him. His image flickered like a bad television signal, and his eyes were hollow, void of life. He spoke in a disjointed, echoing voice, revealing that the forest was cursed, a living entity that fed on the fear and souls of those who dared to enter. He explained that his role was to lure participants into the forest for the entity. His usual jovial videos were a facade, a trap designed to bring fresh prey to satisfy the forest's hunger. As he spoke, the trees around the clearing seemed to lean in, as if listening. Suddenly, Mr. Beast's apparition vanished, leaving me alone with a deafening silence. That's when the forest began to change. The trees started to move, closing in around me, their branches reaching out like twisted hands. The whispers turned into screams, echoing the terror of lost souls. I realized then that the challenge was a macabre game, a hunt where I was the prey. The forest was alive, and it craved my fear. It was not just a physical space, but a realm of horror that defied reality. I was trapped in a nightmare, a pawn in a twisted game orchestrated by an entity that thrived on human terror. As night approached, the forest grew more aggressive. Shadows darted between the trees, and the air became thick with a palpable sense of malice. I knew I had to find a way to escape, to break free from the forest's grasp before it consumed me completely. With each step, I felt the forest's presence closing in, a relentless predator in a twisted game of survival. The final night in the forest was a descent into true terror. The entity that controlled this place had revealed its full horror, no longer content with lurking in the shadows. The trees themselves seemed to pulse with a malevolent life, their branches twisting and reaching for me as I stumbled through the undergrowth. The forest was no longer just a physical space. It felt like a living, breathing entity, its every whisper and movement designed to instill paralyzing fear. The air was thick with the cries of the lost and the hunted, a chorus of despair that echoed through the darkened woods. In a moment of clarity amidst the chaos, I remembered something Mr. Beast had said in his video, "The forest feeds on fear." It was this fear that gave the entity its power, its ability to warp reality into a nightmarish landscape. I realized that my only chance of escape was to confront this fear, to break its hold over me. As I pushed forward, determined to reach the edge of the forest, the entity unleashed its full fury. Shadows formed into grotesque shapes, lunging at me only to dissipate at the last moment. The ground beneath my feet shifted and moved, trying to throw me off balance. The whispers turned into deafening roars, bombarding my senses. But I pressed on, driven by a desperate will to survive. I thought of my family, my friends, and the life I had outside this cursed forest. Each step became a defiance, a declaration that I would not be another lost soul in this unholy place. Finally, as dawn began to break, the forest's grip started to weaken. The twisted trees began to straighten, the shadows receded, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. I emerged from the tree line just as the first light of day penetrated the darkness, feeling the entity's presence recede, its hold over me broken. Exhausted, traumatized, but alive, I collapsed to the ground, the morning sun warming my face. The forest behind me looked normal in the daylight, its horrors hidden beneath a facade of natural beauty. But the memories of what I had experienced lingered, a haunting reminder of the nightmarish reality that existed within. Mr. Beast was nowhere to be found, and the challenge was never mentioned again. His channel continued as if nothing had happened, but I knew the truth. I had faced my deepest fears and survived the forest's curse, but I was left with scars that ran deep, a constant reminder of the night I spent in a living nightmare.